For 30 years, I scrubbed floors, cleaned toilets, and wiped windows until my hands cracked and bled. I never complained, not once, because every dollar I earned was a building block for my son Jeff's future. But on what should have been one of the proudest days of my life, his wedding day, I discovered just how little those decades of sacrifice meant to him when I overheard him tell his doctor, "Mandy's parents are both university professors. How could I let them sit with a janitor?" I still remember the day I found Jeff at the orphanage, his little hand clutching my sleeve, refusing to let go. Something in his eyes spoke to me, and in that moment of compassion, I decided to give him a home. My small business had failed, and with no better opportunities on the horizon, I took multiple cleaning jobs to provide for us. I pinched every penny, denying myself even the smallest comforts so Jeff could have a good education, a monthly allowance, and eventually a house and car. At 68, my body showed the toll of those years, weathered by sun and wind, aged beyond my years from the physical labor that paid for his privileged life. When I was hospitalized with a severe leg infection before Jeff's wedding, I planned to give him my life savings as a gift. Instead, I accidentally overheard him speaking with his doctor. "Since she's getting old, there's no point in wasting money on surgery. The steel pins in her leg aren't a major issue. Just treat it simply." The doctor, Jeff's friend, was horrified. "We've been friends for years, and I have to remind you your mother's getting older, and if her condition isn't addressed soon, we may need to amputate." "What came next broke something in me that could never be repaired," Jeff replied. "You just want your real mother to attend wedding instead of her. Why push her to the point of no return?" I learned that Jeff had been secretly communicating with his birth mother, Carrie, for years. He had arranged for her to attend his wedding while ensuring I would be too disabled to attend. He and his fiancée Mandy were planning to use my money to buy her a car after the wedding while I recovered from an unnecessary amputation. I lay in that hospital bed, tears streaming down my face, as my son, the little boy I had sacrificed everything for, revealed himself as a stranger. To ensure I wouldn't attend his wedding, he had deliberately used infection-prone tools and convinced the doctor not to perform surgery. "After the wedding, we'll have 2 gorgeous babies," he told Mandy. "My mom will be unable to move around, so we'll need to take care of her. But her savings will be enough to help us raise the kids." Gay. Despite the betrayal crushing my heart, I didn't confront him immediately. I secretly arranged for proper medical treatment with the best orthopedic surgeon through my friend Heidi. When Jeff realized I was gone from the hospital, he frantically messaged me about my blessing for the wedding. But his true concern was clear: he needed my money. On his wedding day, I arrived looking nothing like the frail woman in the wheelchair they had seen at the rehearsal. I brought a suitcase that Jeff assumed contained money and a bullhorn to ensure everyone heard the truth. I played video evidence of Carrie rejecting Jeff years ago, saying he was nothing more than a burden. I revealed how Jeff had planned to keep me from attending while using my money to fund his new life, as Carrie's wealthy lover arrived and publicly humiliated her. Jeff's carefully constructed facade crumbled. His respectable birth mother was merely a kept mistress, and he was her illegitimate child. Mandy, seeing her dreams of financial security evaporate, quickly abandoned him. Being a janitor was never a lowly job, I declared to the stunned wedding guests. I am proud of who I am. The ones who constantly rely on others to change their fate are the real shame. Candy standing there, with decades of silent dignity, finally finding voice. I realized that before I was a mother, I was an independent woman, and it was time to reclaim that part of myself. The money I had saved for Jeff would now fund my own dreams and help others through a charity for single mothers and abandoned children. Years later, as I volunteer at an orphanage, I found peace in the wisdom that came at such a high price. Never wet your wings trying to dry someone else's feathers. The brightest colors in life, I've learned, are those lived for yourself. The antiseptic smell of the hospital room filled my nostrils as I laid in bed, my infected leg throbbing with pain. Through the thin curtain separating me from the hallway, I heard hushed voices, my son Jeff and his doctor friend talking just outside my door. I had been planning to surprise Jeff with my life savings as a wedding gift, the money tucked away in the bank card I held tightly in my hand. But what I overheard shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. Jeff, as your friend, I feel I should warn you, the doctor whispered urgently. Your mother is getting older, and her recovery isn't looking good. If her condition continues to worsen, we might have to consider amputating. I expected concern from my son, the boy I'd raised for 30 years after finding him at an orphanage, the child for whom I'd worked multiple cleaning jobs, sacrificing my own comfort to put him through college. Instead, his response left me frozen in disbelief. You're just concerned about my real mother being at the wedding, Jeff replied coldly. But why push my stepmother to her limits? Let her amputate if it comes to that. It's not like I'll abandon her. But if she recovers too quickly, who knows what kind of drama she'll cause when she finds out my real mother is at the wedding instead of her. Stepmother. In all our years together, I had never been anything but mom to Jeff. I quietly tucked my bank card away, the gift I had planned to give now seeming foolish in light of his betrayal. Their conversation continued, Jeff's voice growing more calculated with each word. Since she's getting old, there's no point in wasting money on surgery. The steel pins in her leg aren't a major issue. She won't die from it. Just treat it simply. The doctor shifted uncomfortably. Your mother's getting older, and if her condition isn't addressed soon, we may need to amputate. You just want your birth mother to attend the wedding instead of her. Why push her to the point of no return? My birth mother gave me life, Jeff insisted. No one has the right to deny a mother the chance to be there for her son during such an important moment. If Gina hadn't adopted me, my birth mother would have found me by now. Each word felt like a hammer striking my chest. After decades of sacrifice cleaning offices, schools, and public bathrooms to give him the best education possible, I was now just Gina, an embarrassment to be hidden away during his special day. Later, when I thought Jeff had left, I heard him speaking to his fiancée Mandy. What he said turned my blood to ice. The day of the wedding, she won't be there. I purposely used the most infection-prone tools and didn't perform surgery on her. If she doesn't have surgery on that leg within a month, it'll be ruined. She won't have the strength to cause trouble at the wedding. My son, my Jeff, had deliberately sabotaged my medical treatment to ensure I wouldn't attend his wedding. The pain in my leg was nothing compared to the agony in my heart. After the wedding, we'll have 2 gorgeous babies, he continued to Mandy. My mom will be unable to move around, so we'll need to take care of her, but her savings will be enough to help us raise the kids. So that was their plan. Keep me disabled, drain my savings, and use me as free childcare while they lived the high life with my money, all while parading his real mother around as the respectable parent at his wedding. Through tears, I reached for my phone and texted my best friend Heidi. I needed to get away from this hospital immediately and find a real doctor who would treat my leg properly. No longer would I be saving for Jeff's future. I would be saving myself. When Jeff returned with my medication, I pretended to be asleep. He wiped my hands and face. unaware that I was fully conscious and planning my escape. For 30 years, I had worked tirelessly as a janitor to provide for this man, believing that one day he would appreciate my sacrifices. Now I realized I had raised a viper. In the days that followed, I made arrangements with Heidi to see the best orthopedic surgeon in town. I would get proper treatment for my leg and recover fully, not to attend Jeff's wedding as the embarrassing janitor mother, but to show him exactly what happens when you betray the woman who gave up everything for you. His birth mother, Carrie, whom he idolized so much, had rejected him years ago. I had the video evidence to prove it, and on his wedding day, everyone would know the truth about his cruel plan, about his mother's rejection, and about just how badly he had underestimated the woman who had spent 30 years scrubbing floors to give him a better life than she ever had. I never thought my son would see me as nothing more than a bank account. After 30 years of washing floors, scrubbing toilets, and cleaning other people's messes, my calloused hands had saved enough to give Jeff the life I never had. But as I lay in that hospital bed, my infected leg throbbing with pain, I accidentally discovered the cruel truth hidden behind his concerned smile. "Mandy, don't worry," I heard Jeff whisper to his fiancée when they thought I was asleep. "My mom loves me so much that all her money will definitely go to me once I get it. I'll buy you that car you want, darling. You've already sacrificed by marrying me knowing who my mom is. I promise I'll make sure you have a happy life." And the words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I kept perfectly still, my eyes closed, as I listened to them plotting their future with my hard-earned savings. Over the years, Mandy had made several unreasonable demands, but I always gave in, thinking their happiness was all that mattered. I never imagined things would escalate to this, that my son would deliberately sabotage my medical treatment to keep me from his wedding while still expecting me to finance their dreams. When Jeff stepped out to get my medication, I unlocked his phone with the password I knew by heart. What I found shattered any remaining illusions. Jeff had been in contact with his birth mother, Carrie, for months. There were photos of them having dinner together, messages filled with affection that he never showed me. "Mom, you're so beautiful. Thank you for giving me such excellent genes," he had written to her. I thought about our own conversations, how it was always me initiating, him responding only when he needed money. For years, I had worked tirelessly, never taking vacations, enduring the harsh sun and biting wind to save for Jeff's future. Now, approaching what should have been my retirement, I had pushed myself even harder, worried about how difficult it was for young couples to raise children these days. I wanted to help with my future grandchildren, to ensure they wouldn't struggle the way I had. The doctor had advised surgery for my leg, but Jeff convinced him that, since she's getting old, there's no point wasting money on surgery. I recalled how he'd arranged to have his birth mother attend his wedding in my place, telling the doctor, "If she recovers too quickly, who knows what kind of drama she'll cause when she finds out my real mother is at the wedding instead of her." Later, at the wedding rehearsal, I overheard staff setting up the venue. "Have you heard it's pretty interesting? Apparently, they're having the real mother pose as a hired actress to attend the wedding in place of the adoptive mother. Why isn't the adoptive mother coming herself? She's sick, I think. But I mean, how could the adoptive mother possibly be as close to the kid? Of course he'd be closer to his real mom. I saw his real mom earlier dressed head to toe in designer clothes. Looks like a successful, independent woman. I heard the adoptive mom is a cleaner. She's here today. What a shame." Their words tightened my chest, but what I witnessed next was even more painful. When I was wheeled into the restaurant for dinner after the rehearsal, I overheard Mandy whisper to Jeff, "Your real mom's all decked out in designer clothes. She clearly has money." If we can win her over, we could definitely get a bigger house, and we wouldn't have to keep living in that tiny apartment your mom bought for us. The apartment I had purchased for them was supposed to be temporary. I'd already found a larger standalone house and was ready to sign the contract. Now I realized I'd be saving myself a lot of money. During dinner, when I asked to use the restroom, neither Jeff nor Mandy offered to help me navigate with my wheelchair. It was Carrie who stepped forward, only to shove my wheelchair hard against the wall once we were out of sight. "Gina, didn't I tell you not to let that burden come looking for me? Why didn't you listen?" she hissed, her gentle demeanor vanishing. "I have no money to take care of him. If he wants to call me Mom, that's his business. I'll help out if you want me to act as the respectable mother for appearances, but if you're trying to blackmail me, forget it." And I had seen their chat records, where Jeff frequently gave Carrie expensive gifts and jewelry. The affection I had longed for from my son was being lavished on a woman who had abandoned him and now saw him as nothing but a source of presence. When Jeff and Mandy rushed over, hearing our raised voices, Carrie immediately changed her tone, screaming that I had pushed her. Without hesitation, Jeff took her side, helping her up while looking at me with disdain. In that moment, I made my decision. I would give them one final gift at the wedding, the truth. The money I had saved for Jeff's future would now fund my own. After 30 years of sacrifice, it was time to live for myself. The first time I met Carrie, Jeff's birth mother, was 12 years ago. I'd spent months tracking her down, believing my son deserved to know his roots. When we finally sat face to face in that upscale cafe, her designer handbag casually tossed on the table between us, I was unprepared for the cold disdain in her eyes. "I've told you 1,000,000 times," she had said, her manicured nails tapping impatiently on her coffee cup. "No matter how he's doing, it's none of my business. Don't let that burden come looking for me. If you adopted him, he's your child, not mine. I have no money to raise him." And I had recorded that conversation, not out of malice, but because I knew someday Jeff might need proof. I couldn't bear to shatter his dreams by telling him his birth mother wanted nothing to do with him. Instead, I assured him that his biological parents must be searching for him, but hadn't found him yet. After all, what mother wouldn't love her child? 30 years after taking that small boy from the orphanage, I discovered Jeff had been secretly communicating with Carrie for months. As I lay in my hospital bed, my infected leg throbbing with pain, I unlocked his phone to find photos of them dining together, his messages overflowing with affection he'd never shown me. "Mom, you're so beautiful. Thank you for giving me such excellent genes," he had written to her. The woman in those photos looked much younger than me, polished, elegant, wearing designer clothes. My hands, calloused from decades of cleaning work, seemed ancient in comparison. While I'd labored through sun and wind to provide for Jeff, she'd apparently lived a life of comfort and luxury. At the wedding rehearsal, I was relegated to a small separate room while Carrie took center stage as Jeff's mother. Wheeling myself toward the venue, I overheard staff chatting as they arranged flowers. "Have you heard it's pretty interesting?" one said. "Apparently, they're having the real mother pose as a hired actress to attend the wedding in place of the adoptive mother." "Why isn't the adoptive mother coming herself?" "She's sick, I think, but I mean, how could the adoptive mother possibly be as close to the kid? Of course, he'd be closer to his real mom." I saw his real mom earlier, dressed head to toe in designer clothes. Looks like a successful, independent woman. I heard the adoptive mother is a cleaner. She's here today. What a shame. Through a gap in the doorway, I watched Mandy present Carrie with an expensive camel wool scarf. "Carrie, Jeff's told me so much about you," she gushed. "He always said you were a beauty, and I thought he was just boasting. But now I can see he wasn't lying." I remembered how somber Mandy's face always became when seeing me. Jeff had explained it was because she wasn't feeling well, apparently a chronic condition that only flared up in my presence. When Carrie stepped away to take a call, I heard Mandy whisper to Jeff, "Your real mom's all decked out in designer clothes. She clearly has money. If we can win her over, we could definitely get a bigger house, and we wouldn't have to keep living in that tiny apartment your mom bought for us." Little did they know, I'd already found a larger standalone house and was ready to sign the contract. Now, I'd be saving myself a considerable sum. During dinner after the rehearsal, when I needed to use the restroom, neither Jeff nor Mandy offered to help me navigate with my wheelchair. It was Carrie who volunteered. But once we were out of sight, her gentle demeanor vanished. She shoved my wheelchair hard against the wall, sending pain shooting through my infected leg. "Gina, didn't I tell you not to let that burden come looking for me?" she hissed. "I'm telling you, I have no money to take care of him. If he wants to call me Mom, that's his business. I'll help out if you want me to act as the respectable mother for appearances. But if you're trying to blackmail me, forget it." Her true colors emerged in that moment, the facade of the elegant, caring mother stripped away to reveal the cruel, calculating woman beneath. "You've already gotten plenty of gifts from him, haven't you?" she sneered. I had seen their chat history. Jeff had frequently given Carrie expensive jewelry and presents, things he'd purchased with the monthly allowance I still provided him at 30 years old, worried he might be struggling financially. When Jeff and Mandy heard our raised voices and rushed over, Carrie immediately changed her tune. "Oh my God, Gina," she cried, stumbling backward on her high heels. "I just said you should rest, that I'd attend Jeff's wedding for you, and now you push me. My foot hurts so much." And without hesitation, Jeff took her side, helping her up while looking at me with disdain. "Mom," he said coldly, "I used to think you were just a woman forced by life to become a cleaner and raise me. I respected you, but what you did today has disappointed me so much." I let out a bitter laugh. After raising him for 30 years, I had raised an ungrateful child who couldn't see through this transparent performance. Right then, I made my decision. On his wedding day, everyone would know the truth about Carrie. I would play the video of her rejecting him 12 years ago, her disdainful voice echoing through the venue as she called him a burden. I would reveal how she was merely a wealthy man's mistress, not the successful, independent woman they imagined. And I would show Jeff just how foolish he had been to trade a mother who had sacrificed everything for him for one who had always seen him as nothing but an inconvenience. I chose my brightest outfit for Jeff's wedding day. After 30 years of wearing faded and practical clothes suitable for cleaning, I finally had the freedom to dress for myself. The vibrant colors reflected my newfound resolve. No longer would I dim my light to make others comfortable. My leg, properly treated by the specialist Dr. De Heidi had arranged, felt strong beneath me. The wheelchair was gone, along with any trace of the meek, self-sacrificing woman I had been. The grand ballroom glittered with expensive decorations that I had paid for. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across white linen tablecloths, while string musicians played soft classical music. I slipped into the back row of seats, unrecognizable to those who had only seen me as a frail woman in a wheelchair during the rehearsal. From my corner, I watched Jeff nervously checking his phone. "My mom told me she'll give me the money today." I overheard him whisper to Mandy, "She's disabled now, so she won't dare refuse me or cause trouble. Don't worry." The ceremony proceeded with practiced precision. Carrie sat in the front row, elegant in designer clothes, playing the part of the proud mother perfectly. Guests commented on how beautiful Jeff's mother was, how graceful she seemed. If only they knew the truth. During the speeches, I saw Mandy looking increasingly displeased, arguing quietly with Jeff, who was trying to calm her down. He stepped away to make a call, and that's when I made my move. I had prepared for this moment, purchasing an air horn that would cut through the ambient noise and force everyone to pay attention. The loud blast silenced the room instantly. "Jeff, are you calling me?" I stood up from the guest seats, my voice carrying clearly through the sudden quiet. When Jeff turned and saw me, his face drained of color. He rushed toward me, panic evident in every step. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he whispered urgently. "I told you to rest at home." "You told me to bring you the money, didn't you?" I replied, loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "How can I give it to you if I don't come?" My words carried across the room, causing heads to turn and whispers to begin. Jeff's face alternated between pale and flushed as guests began to exchange glances. "Gina, you're so selfish, Gay," he hissed under his breath. "All I wanted was for someone to take your place at the wedding to give me some face." I stood tall, meeting his gaze without flinching. "The venue and the banquet for this wedding were all paid for by me," I announced, my voice steady. "I was kind to you, but you called me a shrew behind my back. Now let me show you what a real shrew looks like." Stepping onto a chair to ensure everyone could see me, I began to reveal the truth, how Jeff had conspired with his doctor to compromise my medical treatment so I couldn't attend the wedding, how he planned to use my savings to buy Mandy a car, how he was ashamed of me because I was just a janitor. I spent 30 years of my life cleaning other people's messes to put this man through school, I told the shocked audience. I bought him a house and a car. His elegant birth mother and well-educated in-laws haven't contributed a single dime. The guest's expression shifted from confusion to horror as the story unfolded. Some shot disapproving glances at Jeff, while others looked at Carrie with newfound suspicion. Then came my masterstroke. I nodded to the tech operator, and a video began playing on the large screen behind the head table. It showed Carrie from 12 years ago, her face twisted with disgust as she declared, "I've told you 1,000,000 times, no matter how he's doing, it's none of my business. Don't let that burden come looking for me. If you adopted him, he's your child, not mine." Jeff froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. He had spent years idealizing this woman, believing she was the mother he should have had, only to discover that I had found her long ago and she had rejected him outright. The final blow came when a well-dressed man stormed into the ballroom, flanked by bodyguards. Without hesitation, he yanked Carrie from her seat and slapped her hard across the face. "I've been keeping you for so many years," he shouted, "giving you all the things you want, the money, the car, even a villa, and you still dared to have someone else's child behind my back. I've done a paternity test with Jeff. You're done. Carrie." The truth hit Jeff like a physical blow. The mother he had thought would help him climb the social ladder was nothing more than a wealthy man's mistress. He was the child of this mistress, and another man more despised than even a bastard child. As Carrie's sugar daddy dragged her away, her anguished screams echoing through the ballroom, Jeff stood paralyzed in the center of his ruined wedding. Mandy's face had turned from shock to calculation to disgust in the span of minutes. I approached my son one last time, placing the suitcase I had brought on the table. "You want money? I'll give it to you." I opened it and pulled out a handful of fake bills, tossing them into the air, where they fluttered down like oversized confetti. "Everything's fake, Jeff, just like your relationship with me." Mandy lunged for the suitcase, her composure completely gone. "Everything's fake. Gina, are you trying to cause trouble on purpose? Let me tell you, if there's no money today, I'm not marrying Jeff." I looked at her calmly, then back at my son, whose world was crumbling before his eyes. "You're right," I said. "I came here to cause trouble, and I'm just getting started." That evening, as the chaos of the ruined wedding settled into a hollow aftermath, my phone lit up with Jeff's name. I let it ring several times, savoring the moment. For 30 years, I had jumped whenever he called, eager to hear his voice, to help with whatever he needed. Now, I felt only a cool detachment as I finally answered. "Gina, you're so selfish." His voice trembled with righteous indignation. "All I wanted was for someone to take your place at the wedding to give me some face. And you sold my wedding house. You're illegally meddling with other people's finances. Do you realize that?" I almost laughed at his audacity. The house he called his had been purchased with money I had earned scrubbing floors and cleaning bathrooms for 3 decades. Every dollar represented hours of physical labor that had aged my body beyond my years. "Then sue me," I replied coldly. "The house was bought with my money. The property deed is in my name." I had indeed sold the apartment I'd purchased for Jeff and Mandy when they got engaged. It was supposed to be temporary. I'd already found a larger standalone house and was ready to sign the contract when I discovered their betrayal. The apartment had been a generous gift, but apparently not good enough for them. "I did say I'd transfer it to you," I continued, "but you refused it because the apartment was too small for you. You kept pestering me for money, wanting me to buy a bigger house. Now you can buy it yourself. I hope you find a nice big house. Good luck with that." The line went silent for a moment before Jeff exploded. "You can't do this to me. Mandy's already threatening to leave because of what happened at the wedding. How am I supposed to keep her without a house? Where are we supposed to live? Perhaps your real mother can help you, Etty," I suggested. "Though I doubt Carrie has much to offer now that her sugar daddy has cut her off." "This is all your fault," Jeff was shouting now. "I spent years searching for my birth mother, building a relationship with her, only to have you humiliate her in front of everyone. You've ruined everything." "I ruined nothing, Jeff," I said quietly. "I simply revealed the truth. You chose to believe in a fantasy rather than appreciate the reality of who has always been there for you." I hung up, blocking his number as Heidi and I continued packing for our trip abroad. I had always dreamed of seeing Paris, of wandering through art museums in Rome, of watching the northern lights dance across Scandinavian skies. For 3 decades, those dreams had been set aside, deemed less important than Jeff's education, his first car, his wedding. Now, with the property sale complete and my savings securely in my own name, I had enough money to live comfortably for years. I had worked hard all my life. It was time to enjoy the fruits of my labor. To my surprise, when I returned from my European adventure 3 months later, Jeff was waiting at my doorstep. I had expected our relationship to end at the wedding, but I had underestimated his shamelessness. "This is all your fault," he began without preamble, his face haggard and unshaven. "Mandy left me 2 weeks after the wedding. I've lost my job because I couldn't focus. I'm living in a cheap motel because you sold my house out from under me." I stepped past him to unlock my door, saying nothing. "Gina, I'm talking to you, he persisted, following me inside uninvited. Give me a few $100,000, and I can buy a big house. Maybe I can win Mandy back. When I didn't respond, his tone shifted from demanding to threatening. If you don't help me, I'll tell everyone what a terrible mother you've been. I'll say you abandoned me when I needed you most. Is that what you want people to think of you? I continued unpacking my suitcase, methodically folding away my vacation clothes, as if he weren't even there. Are you listening to me? His voice rose in frustration. I'm your son. You can't just ignore me. Finally, I turned to face him. No, Jeff, you're not my son anymore. You made that perfectly clear when you plotted to keep me from your wedding, when you called me just a cleaner to your doctor, when you planned to use me for my money while hiding me away like something shameful. But I need you, he whispered, his arrogance crumbling into desperation. I have nowhere else to go. What about Carrie? I asked. Your real mother who is going to help you climb the social ladder. Jeff's face crumpled. She won't return my calls. After her sugar daddy cut her off, she had to sell her jewelry just to get by. She told me not to contact her again. I wasn't surprised. Carrie had never wanted the responsibility of a son, only the appearances of being a loving mother when it suited her. I made a mistake, Jeff admitted, his voice small. I was stupid and ungrateful. Please, can't you forgive me? Give me another chance. Looking at him, this man I had raised from a child, who had once grabbed my sleeve at the orphanage and refused to let go, I felt nothing. The warm maternal love that had defined me for 30 years had cooled into indifference. The house is gone, Jeff, I said simply. I've already donated half the money to a charity for single mothers and orphaned children. The rest is paying for my retirement. There's nothing left for you. But where am I supposed to go? Panic edged his voice. What am I supposed to do? I opened my front door, gesturing for him to leave. The same thing I did 30 years ago when I found myself alone with a child to support. Get a job. Work hard. Build your own life instead of expecting others to build it for you. As I closed the door on his stunned face, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For 30 years, I had carried the burden of Jeff's needs, his wants, his future. Now, finally, I was free to live for myself. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in decades, no longer haunted by worries about whether I was doing enough for my son. The money I had saved for his future was now funding my present, and for the first time in 30 years, that felt absolutely right. Despite the betrayal that shattered my heart, I refused to let bitterness define my future. The money I had saved for Jeff's bigger house, nearly $300,000, now rested in my bank account. A testament to 3 decades of scrubbing floors, cleaning bathrooms, and sacrificing my own comfort. For the first time in 30 years, I had no one to support but myself. The thought was both liberating and terrifying. Martha, what will you do with all that money? My friend Helen asked as we shared coffee in my modest living room. You could buy yourself a beautiful condo, travel the world, or just retire and never clean another toilet again. I gazed out the window at the neighborhood park where mothers pushed strollers and children played on swings. In that ordinary scene, I found my answer. I'm going to help women like me, I said. Single mothers who have no one to turn to, women who work themselves to the bone for their children only to find themselves alone and empty-handed in their later years. 2 months later, I stood before a small gathering in a community center, my hands trembling slightly as I held the microphone. Behind me, a simple banner read, Adversity Mother Support Fund. representatives from local women's organizations, social services, and a few journalists filled the folding chairs. 30 years ago, I adopted a boy from an orphanage, I began, my voice growing stronger with each word. I worked 3 cleaning jobs to give him everything I never had: education, opportunities, a future. I believed that my sacrifices would be worth it, that one day he would stand beside me and we would both be proud of the life we had built together. I paused, taking a deep breath. But that day never came. Instead, I discovered that my son was ashamed of me, embarrassed by my work as a janitor. He arranged to keep me from his wedding while planning to use my savings to buy a house and car for himself and his new wife. Murmurs rippled through the audience. A few women nodded in sad understanding. My story isn't unique, I continued. Every day, women sacrifice their dreams, their health, and their futures for their children. Some are blessed with gratitude and love in return. Others find themselves discarded when they're no longer useful. Today, I'm establishing the Adversity Mother Support Fund with $250,000 of my own money savings that were meant for my son's future, but will now secure the futures of women who have given everything and received nothing in return. The applause was warm, genuine, as I explained the details of the fund educational scholarships for single mothers, emergency assistance for women in crisis, retirement planning services for caregivers. I saw tears in many eyes. These women understood the weight of thankless sacrifice. After the ceremony, a young mother approached me, a toddler balanced on her hip. "I clean houses 6 days a week," she said quietly. "My daughter's father left when I was 7 months pregnant. Some days I'm so tired I can barely stand, but I keep going because I want her to have a better life than I did." I recognized myself in her exhausted eyes, in the way she straightened her shoulders despite her fatigue. Taking her hand, I said, "The fund will help you go back to school if that's what you want. Your daughter will see her mother succeed, not just survive." The single mothers weren't the only ones who needed help. Once a month, I visited the local orphanage, the same one where I had found Jeff all those years ago. The children there had been abandoned or surrendered, just as he had been. They needed to know that their worth wasn't determined by their parents' choices. One afternoon, a small girl with solemn eyes tugged at my sleeve, just as Jeff had done 3 decades earlier. My heart skipped a beat at the familiar gesture, but this time I was wiser. I crouched down to her level. "Would you like to draw with me?" I asked, pointing to the art supplies I'd brought. She nodded shyly, and together we created colorful pictures of suns and flowers. Unlike with Jeff, I wouldn't be taking this child home. Instead, I would help match her with a family who would truly appreciate her, who would see her as a blessing rather than an investment. "This time, we'll choose the family you like," I told her softly. The girl's eyes lit up, and she held my hand tightly, as if she had found a warmth she had long been searching for. In that moment, I understood that the transmission of love and hope had never ceased. I had let go of the unnecessary burdens of the past and embraced a new purpose. The Adversity Mother Support Fund became my legacy, far more meaningful than anything I could have built through Jeff. Each quarter, I reviewed applications from women needing assistance, read thank you letters from mothers who had completed degrees, and welcomed new children to the orphanage's art program. The money that had been meant to finance Jeff's ungrateful ambitions now fueled dreams that would otherwise have withered from lack of support. In giving to others who truly appreciated the help, I finally found the gratitude and purpose that my years of sacrifice had never yielded from my son. The first brushstroke on canvas felt foreign to my hand. After decades of holding mops and scrub brushes, the delicate paintbrush seemed almost weightless between my fingers. I stood before the easel in my sunlit apartment, uncertain yet determined. The last time I had painted was before Jeff entered my life, before I became mom instead of Eleanor, before cleaning other people's homes consumed my days, and raising a son who wasn't mine became my sole purpose. "You're overthinking it," said Ruth, my art instructor from the senior center. Her silver hair was twisted into a casual bun, paint-spattered apron, evidence of a life spent in creative pursuit. Just let the brush meet the canvas. There's no right or wrong way to begin again. And 6 months had passed since Jeff's disastrous wedding. 6 months since I had reclaimed my savings and my dignity in one dramatic afternoon. The initial weeks had been difficult, sleepless nights filled with replayed conversations. Moments when I reached for the phone to check on him before remembering our relationship was over. But gradually, the weight of responsibility lifted from my shoulders, allowing me to stand straighter, breathe deeper. "What do you enjoy?" Eleanor, my therapist, had asked during our third session. Not as Jeff's mother, not as a provider, but as yourself. What brings you joy? The question had left me speechless. For 30 years, my preferences had been secondary, my pleasures sacrificed for practicality. What did I enjoy? I couldn't remember. "Let's discover that together," she suggested gently. "Think back to before the orphanage, before Jeff. What did that younger woman love to do?" Memories surfaced slowly, painting landscapes on Sunday afternoons, tending a small balcony garden, walking through art museums with a sketchbook in hand. Passions I had packed away like summer clothes in winter, never expecting such a long, cold season. Now, at 68, I was rediscovering those packed-away parts of myself. My first canvas in 3 decades featured a sunrise, symbolic perhaps, but fitting. The colors weren't quite right, my technique rusty, but the joy of creation flooded back with each stroke. My small balcony gradually transformed as well. What began with a single potted geranium expanded to a verdant oasis of herbs, flowering plants, and even a dwarf lemon tree. I spent hours with my hands in the soil, the earthy scent replacing the chemical smell of cleaning products that had defined my working life. The garden offered living proof of renewal plants that seemed dead in winter, emerging with fresh green growth when tended with care. "You've got quite the green thumb," observed Mr. Finley, my 80-year-old neighbor, leaning over the railing that separated our balconies. "Those tomatoes look better than anything at the farmer's market." Our conversations over coffee among my thriving plants became a highlight of my week. Unlike my relationship with Jeff, which had been defined by giving and rarely receiving, Mr. Finley and I exchanged equally gardening tips for his homemade bread recipes, stories about my painting class for his jazz record recommendations. "I spent 40 years as an accountant," he told me one evening, as we watched the sunset paint the sky in colors I was learning to mix on my palette. Never had time for music except on weekends. When I retired, I promised myself I'd listen to jazz every single day. Small pleasure, but it's mine. I understood perfectly. My life now consisted of these small, significant pleasures, the weight of a brush in my hand, the satisfaction of nurturing seedlings to fruition, the companionship of people who expected nothing from me but my presence. 3 months after beginning painting lessons, I volunteered at a nursing home, offering art therapy sessions to residents. Many of them were my age or slightly older, their life circumstances different, but their fundamental needs the same: to be seen, to create, to connect. I never thought I could make something beautiful, Mrs. Rodriguez said, admiring her watercolor of a remembered childhood beach. My husband always handled the creative things in our family. It's never too late to discover what you can do, I replied, helping her sign her name in the corner. The pride in her eyes mirrored what I felt with my own creations. Not because they were masterpieces, but because they were expressions of a self I was still uncovering. On spring afternoons, I led small groups of seniors to the botanical gardens, portable easels and watercolors in tow. We painted the same flowers with vastly different results, each canvas reflecting a unique perspective. A retired English teacher captured the precise structure of a rose, while a former construction worker interpreted the same bloom with bold, impressionistic strokes. "Look at us old folks, making art like we have all the time in the world," joked Walter, a widower who had joined our group after his wife's passing. "We do have all the time in the world," I reminded him. "At least all the time that matters the present." And in the evenings, I attended community college classes, art history, creative writing, even a course on investment management to better handle the remains of my savings. The campus hummed with youthful energy, but I found my place among the diverse students, many also pursuing delayed dreams. "You inspire me," said Jasmine, a 20-something in my drawing class. My mom always wanted to go to college, but never did because she was raising us kids. "I'm going to tell her about you." The compliment warmed me. Though I felt no particular pride in my journey, I had simply, finally, chosen myself after a lifetime of choosing others. The woman who had scrubbed floors and raised an ungrateful son wasn't gone. She was still part of me. Her strength and endurance valuable assets, but she was no longer all of me. One afternoon, while organizing my growing collection of art supplies, I found an old photograph of Jeff as a child. His gap-toothed smile and innocent eyes betrayed no hint of the man he would become. For a moment, grief clutched at my heart, not for the relationship lost, but for the one that could have been if narcissism hadn't corrupted it. I placed the photo in a drawer rather than discarding it. That chapter of my life, though painful, had shaped me, but it no longer defined me or limited my future. At 68, I had rediscovered the woman who existed before motherhood consumed her identity and found her still vibrant, curious, and ready to embrace whatever years remained with authentic joy. On my birthday, I stood before a new canvas and painted a sunflower face turned upward, petals open to the light. Beneath it, I wrote the words that had become my mantra: "The brightest colors are those lived for no one else." 10 winters had passed since I last heard Jeff's voice. 10 years of seasons changing while I rebuilt my life from the ashes of betrayal. Sometimes I wondered what had become of the boy I raised, the man who had so callously discarded me when I no longer served his purpose. Not out of longing that emotion had long since withered, but from a distant, almost academic curiosity. I got my answer on a crisp autumn morning when I stopped at my favorite coffee shop near the community center, where I now taught art classes to retirees. The barista, a college student who knew my order by heart, handed me my cappuccino with an uncertain expression. "Miss Sarah, there was a man in here yesterday asking about you. Said he was your son." The cup nearly slipped from my hand. What did he look like? Disheveled, tired. Clothes were expensive but worn out. He seemed desperate. I thanked her and found a quiet corner table, my mind racing. In the decades since Jeff's wedding disaster, I had created a new life for myself teaching art, volunteering at the orphanage, traveling with friends I'd made at the senior center. My Adversity Mother Support Fund had helped dozens of single mothers secure education and stable housing. I had found purpose and peace. And now, like a ghost from another lifetime, Jeff had reappeared. He wasn't difficult to find. 3 days later, I spotted him sitting on a bench in the park across from my apartment building, watching the entrance, even from a distance. I could see how time and circumstance had ravaged him. His once immaculate appearance was now haggard, his confident posture replaced by a defeated slump. I could have walked away, continued the silence of the past decade. Instead, I approached him directly, my steps measured and calm. "Hello, Jeff." Tank. He looked up momentarily startled, then attempted a shadow of his old charming smile. Sarah, you look good." Indeed. At 78, I took pride in my appearance, silver hair styled in a modern bob, comfortable but stylish clothes, minimal makeup that enhanced rather than masked my age. I had grown comfortable in my skin, the wrinkles earned through decades of hard work, now badges of honor rather than flaws to hide. "What do you want?" "Jeff," I asked, remaining standing. I would not sit, would not suggest this was a social call between mother and son. "Can we talk somewhere private?" His eyes darted around nervously. "Please, I've been trying to find you for months." 20 minutes later, we sat in a quiet corner of a nearby cafe, two strangers connected by a past neither could escape. Jeff's story unfolded in fragments between sips of black coffee, his hands trembling slightly as he recounted the decade of decline that followed our last encounter. "Mandy left me a week after the wedding," he began. "Said she'd never signed up to marry a janitor's son, especially one whose real mother was just some rich man's mistress. Without your money to buy the house she wanted, I had nothing she valued." He attempted to win her back with grand gestures, expensive gifts purchased on credit, promises of future wealth, but Mandy had already moved on to a more promising prospect, the son of her father's business partner. "I thought Carrie would help me," Jeff continued, referring to his birth mother. "After all her talk about family bonds and how much she'd missed me all those years, I was sure she'd come through. But Carrie, once cut off by her wealthy benefactor, had troubles of her own. The designer clothes and luxury lifestyle Jeff had so admired were rapidly sold off to cover basic expenses. When Jeff approached her for help, she laughed bitterly. "She told me she never wanted a child in the first place," he said, staring into his coffee cup. "Said I was just a mistake she'd been trying to forget for 30 years, and that she only played along with the mother-son reunion because I was buying her expensive gifts." His voice cracked. "She said at least she got something out of our relationship, unlike you, who got nothing but heartache for your 30 years of sacrifice." The corporate job Jeff had been so proud of, the one he feared I would embarrass him at with my working class background, unraveled next. Without the wedding to distract him, his performance slipped. Colleagues who had once admired his polished facade began to notice the emptiness behind it. 6 months after the wedding, that wasn't. He was let go with a modest severance package. "I thought I'd bounce back quickly," Jeff said, his once confident voice now hollow. "I had connections, experience, a good resume, but word gets around in business circles. No one wanted to hire the guy whose wedding turned into a public expose of family dysfunction." The severance money dwindled as Jeff maintained appearances, the luxury apartment, the expensive suits, the high-end restaurants where he networked desperately for opportunities that never materialized. Credit cards filled the gaps until they reached their limits. Eventually, the facade crumbled completely. I've been living in my car for the past 3 months, he admitted, shame coloring his pale face. Everything I owned is gone sold, repossessed, or in storage I can no longer afford. I thought maybe you could help me get back on my feet. Just a loan to get an apartment, some decent clothes for interviews. I studied the man across from me, this stranger who had once been my world. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. Jeff had been ashamed of my work as a janitor, embarrassed by my practical clothes and calloused hands. Now he sat before me in clothes that hadn't been washed in days, asking for the very money he once thought himself too good to be associated with. There was a time I would have given you everything, I said quietly. Every penny I had saved, every ounce of energy in my body, every minute of my remaining years. But that time has passed, Jeff. You made your choice 10 years ago, when you decided I wasn't good enough to be seen at your wedding. When you plotted to keep me disabled so I couldn't embarrass you. I was wrong, he whispered. So terribly wrong. I see that now. Yes, you were, I agreed. And now you're experiencing the consequences of that choice. Just as I experienced the consequences of mine when I chose to adopt a child who ultimately saw me as nothing but a resource to exploit, I stood, placing enough money on the table to cover both our coffees. The fund I established, the one I told you about when you came begging after the wedding, it helps single mothers and orphan children. It doesn't help entitled men who squandered every advantage and kindness they were ever given. As I walked away, Jeff called after me, his voice breaking. What am I supposed to do now? I turned back one last time. What I did for 30 years, work hard, start at the bottom, build something real instead of a house of cards balanced on other people's money and goodwill. Outside, the autumn air felt fresh against my face. I felt no triumph in Jeff's downfall, no vindictive pleasure in his suffering, only a profound gratitude that I had found the strength, 10 years earlier, to close the door on a relationship that had drained me for decades, and open new ones that had brought genuine joy and meaning to my final chapter of life. In the golden afternoon light of the orphanage activity room, I found myself surrounded by curious children, their innocent faces turned toward me with expectation. "What is a mother?" asked a small girl with braided hair and earnest eyes. I smiled, the weight of my 70 years resting lightly on shoulders that had once carried too much. "A mother is someone who holds the umbrella for you when it rains," I answered, my voice soft yet certain. "But remember, she should never stand in the rain herself for so long that she forgets what sunshine feels like." The sunlight streamed through the windows, casting warm pools of light across my silver hair and illuminating the paintings we had created together, bright butterflies and blooming flowers, symbols of transformation and renewal. The children nodded, too young perhaps to fully understand, but sensing the truth in my words. "Never wet your wings trying to dry someone else's feathers," I continued, the hard-won wisdom flowing from a place of peace rather than bitterness. In that moment, I realized I was no longer the woman who had lived solely for others, the woman who had scrubbed floors for 30 years to provide for an ungrateful son, who had postponed her own dreams to finance his. I had become something more complete, a woman who had reclaimed her passion for art and gardening, who had created a foundation to help other struggling mothers, who had found joy in giving back to her community on her own terms. The pain of Jeff's betrayal had not disappeared entirely. Such wounds never fully heal, but it had transformed into something valuable. The understanding that self-sacrifice without self-respect is not love but self-destruction. Friends, The story you've just read carries one of life's most profound truths. You cannot pour from an empty cup. For too many years, we're taught that selflessness means erasing ourselves completely, that love means giving until we're hollow. But true wisdom reveals something different, something I learned only after decades of painful sacrifice. Self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. Just as the mother in our story discovered, your worth isn't measured by how much you endure for others, but by how authentically you live your own truth. The most meaningful relationships are balanced exchanges, not one-sided sacrifices that drain your spirit dry. When you consistently put yourself last, you teach others that's where you belong. Instead, honor your needs, nurture your passions, and protect your boundaries. This doesn't mean turning away from responsibility or withholding love. It means loving yourself enough to ensure you have something genuine to give. Remember, never wet your wings trying to dry someone else's feathers. Your wings were meant to carry you toward your own dreams, not to be damaged beyond repair for someone who doesn't value the sacrifice. Has someone's ingratitude ever forced you to reassess your boundaries? Or perhaps you've had to learn the difficult lesson of putting yourself first after years of self-neglect. Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what another person needs to hear today. If you found value in this message, please subscribe to our channel for more stories that illuminate life's challenging truths with compassion and wisdom. Together, we're creating a community where authentic living is celebrated and where we remind each other that it's never too late to reclaim your joy. Click that subscribe button and join us on this journey of self-discovery, because the brightest colors in life truly are those lived for yourself.